Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Divinity Original Sin on PS4. Fantasy, as a genre, and as I've said before, means many different things to many different people. It could mean reading and playing modern takes on a Dark Ages that factually never was for fun and profit. It could mean hiding opinions and hot takes on modern life and society by couching it behind times long ago and far away that just so happen to be facing a similar crisis, be it a war, social upheaval, or influx of poorly understood technology. It could mean someone gets to avoid their dreary daily life by being the pixie fairy they always wanted to be. Or it could mean some asshole online, upon seeing a large conglomerate corporation post a picture of orcs and sombreros, therefore denoting that they might ever so slightly be Mexican themed, deciding to shit themselves in public and show themselves to be the racist pieces of shit that they are in long and pointless angry screeds about how it's not their fantasy and it's for the woke, thereby damning the hobby they love or claim to love to ever increasing amounts of ostracization and social condemnation, and in time utter commercial failure because it is a corporate commodity and they don't care what you think. Seriously, if you haven't seen this new batch of Christian nationalist literal white knights coming out to denounce this ultimately inoffensive piece of corporate media online, you're much better off. But in the end, the concept of fantasy as a genre is a thoroughly modern one, taking the left behind bits and pieces of corpses of humanity's past and slapping them together like cheap fencing for whoever is willing to buy it. Today's topic is not much different. Let's get into it with 2014's Divinity Original Sin. Divinity Original Sin was my first introduction to Larian Studios, the currently mega popular developers behind Baldur's Gate 3. Now, considering I've reviewed both previous games in the Baldur's Gate series, even visiting other shows to discuss the topic, I have yet to play Baldur's Gate 3, and likely won't until they drop the asking price by at least $30 for what is an otherwise glorified GIF file. I don't even know what the fucking plot of the game is, beyond getting rid of squid babies behind your eyeballs. All I do know of Larian's current blockbuster effort is that it has become a highly meme-worthy game about very real human beings making lots of questionable art and loudly expounding upon which digital cartoon characters they want to fuck, or which two digital cartoon characters they want to see fucking each other, a certain symptom of the terminally lonely in our current society. It seems a lot like a child smashing two Barbie dolls together while screaming, "Now kiss!" This sort of shit usually leads down dark rabbit holes of, I don't know, salacious and torrid fan fiction of Bugs Bunny and Winnie the Pooh getting it on. I'm sure that exists somewhere. Now look, since I just called out a huge swath of the internet, I know it's all fake and none of this matters, and with any luck, someone will have the guts to start a full-fledged nuclear war soon. So you do you, boo. I'm just saying that these kinds of things are usually what leads to the seeker to eventually ending up in front of a federal judge being sentenced to 25 years for you can probably guess what. And if you are a horny cartoon fuckfest enjoyer in the United States, well, given the current political climate and where things are likely going in the next few years, that sort of shit will likely net you life in prison to the death penalty. So I suggest y'all get real good at hiding that shit. Just saying. But anyway, Larian has come a long way since Divinity. What do I mean by that? Divinity Original Sin is in fact the fourth game in the long-running Divinity series, and acts as a prequel to the entire franchise. The original game, Divine Divinity, supposedly plays a lot like Diablo, with branching conversation paths. I say supposedly because I did not know Divine Divinity existed until I started writing this review, and because I can't be arsed to play any Diablo game because I don't like Blizzard's work, and their games look like boring trash to me. So any Blizzard fans can judge that statement for themselves and fuck right off if you're thinking about coming for me for my opinion. But as it is, I'm here to discuss Original Sin. Among the big highlights of this game is the fact that it's a dual protagonist game, meaning you have to create two characters at the start of the game. not with a lot of options beyond fighter, sorcerer, thief, and some fancy fantasy naming convention hybrid of those three mythic ideas, but also that it is possible to run this as a multiplayer game, with a friend running the second character, with two computer-controlled characters helping out. But possibly the biggest trademark of how Larian builds the games is not that it's branching dialogue or setting tropes, but how you approach game tactics and the synergy between magic, melee fighting, and battlefield elements to build a unique experience tailored to how you, as the player, approach combat. Electrical attacks don't just get a bonus with water on the combat field, it works with lots of fluids, including gallons of spilled blood. Oil and gunpowder can be set off by torches, magic fireballs, dragon's breath, you get the idea. It really only is restricted by the player's imagination or ability to feel clever about quickly understanding the game's mechanics. As far as the story goes, however, the game is fairly boilerplate. Your two protagonists are called Source Hunters, whose job it is to hunt down and destroy dangerous magic known as Source, which can corrupt magic and make things way, way worse. Our two characters are sent to a faraway town on the edge of the empire they work for to solve a murder of a council member, only to uncover a siege of orcs and undead, our traditional bad guys in fantasy fiction, being led by a cult called the Immaculates, which is a group of sorcerers, spelled with the letter U for reasons, who have been mining a magic-heavy metal that they plan to use to build an army able to conquer the civilized world. Along the way, they keep running into a goddess who can transport the heroes to a fortress outside the time-space continuum, where this goddess tells the main protagonists they are reincarnations of two ancient generals, one male, one female, who were transformed into minor deities that were supposed to guard something called the God Box for all eternity. However, a demon named the Trife, not exactly the most imposing name, but whatever, has tricked Astarte, the goddess of life and wielder of benevolent magics, to reopen the box and let the magic out and get corrupted. And that corruption now comes in the form of an unstoppable void dragon, which your characters now have to somehow stop. The Trife is manipulating a mortal instrument of Astarte's magic, a woman named Leandra, and the protagonists are given the option to either reconstruct something called the Soul Forge to cut her psychic link with the demon, or if needed, kill her and cut the link the hard way. In another series of convoluted quests, where they have to speak with other wizards who knew Leandra back when, the protagonists follow the trail back to where she's hiding out in the wilderness. There they learn this Leandra's goal is to get into the God Box through the fortress outside space-time they get transported to every so often, to unleash whatever is inside the box at the demon's behest. Before Leandra can get there, the heroes must confront her. If they rebuild the Soul Forge, Leandra is shown how evil she has become and quits her campaign, or they have to kill her. Either way, the heroes must go to a place called the First Garden and join forces with the Astarte to fight Trife before he opens the box. But the demon summons the corrupt magic Void Dragon, which the players must fight. Once it is all said and done, the heroes learn the other gods knew damn well that there was what was going on and let the magic get corrupted. They banish the dragon back to the box, and the goddess Astarte takes over guardianship of the god box for all time. And the heroes return to the mortal world to go off to a new series of adventures. So basically, it starts out with a low-stakes investigation on the low levels of power, and ramps all the way up to slaying dragons and gods outside reality. This is the very definition of high fantasy. Start low and slow, and then find your way out of the fate of the whole world that rests on your shoulders, and you and only you can fix it. You may be wondering how this differs from other type of fantasy, as all of this seems similar. And yes, it all does seem similar, when it's a bodybuilder and a beach babe with swords and spells, featuring in absolutely every type of long ago style story. But there are differences. This type of game was popularized because of the Tolkien style of fantasy, which has been carried on by authors like Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin. There are other styles, such as sword and sorcery, which is focused more on one dude carving his way through small stakes cults and thieves' dens, searching for treasure, or low fantasy, which has very little magic and is focused more on the drama of local problems in small kingdoms, where the main characters don't go very far and aren't being invaded every other week by dark armies of some all-powerful demigod. But by far the most popular, or at least the most forced upon us as a consuming public, is the world or galaxy spanning type of fantasy. And this is exactly the kind of story we get in Divinity Original Sin. But hey, top down isometric RPG with local co op. That's always fun if that's what you're into, but not so much if for the Twitch shooter crowd. Divinity Original Sin was another of the successfully crowdfunded games that came out around this time in gaming, where the ideas of the isometric role playing game in the style of Baldur's Gate were considered long and dead. But as the money people in games often misunderstand by reading the weekly returns of their highly cultivated focus groups, they found out that there is still a healthy audience for this type of game. Similar success stories are Wasteland 2 and Pillars of Eternity, both of which I have previously covered. The Kickstarter wasn't the whole total, but it was over $1 million, which was enough to secure Larian a loan for the rest of the budget. The Enhanced Edition, with new story beats and some extras, was the one I played that was released in 2015 for PlayStation and Xbox due to its success at release, which was published for console by Focus Entertainment. Somewhat ironic, then, that years later Larian would beat out Obsidian Entertainment and In Exile to approach Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast to make the true Baldur's Gate sequel, since all of them, in some way or another, were in competition for that very same thing. Critics of the time gave Divinity Original Sin a generally favorable review, lots of 9s out of 10s, and were very positive of the setting execution, stating as one of the few negatives that since the game did not give much in the way of tutorials, that it may turn away those new to the game, and I have to agree. This game really does not give any indication of how to interact with its systems, and if you haven't already played similar titles, you'll probably lose out on a lot. Financially, the game did very well, and was Larian's top seller of their catalog until its sequel, Divinity Original Sin 2, outdid it. It helped Larian get into the wider game sphere as a creator of deep, complex role-playing titles, which the developers seem to love being. I don't have a problem with that. We need those kinds of titles as much as we need smaller, simpler titles. But in conclusion, here are my ending thoughts on Divinity Original Sin. It's a lot. It's a lot of overlapping systems, a lot of overlapping dialogue choices that could be easily missed if you don't build at least one of your characters to be a charismatic chatterbox. Yet somehow it is kind of sparse. It is limited on your truly viable creation options. You can mix and match abilities, but the problem is not many of them work long term as the game gets deeper into its story. So you better just be happy being a meat shield sword and board type, or a physically fragile but amazing spellcaster, solely focused on training up those specific skills. And like many of its fellow titles, it has a great opener, what seems to be a great traditional closer, and a very weak and bloated middle. The greatest sin Original Sin commits is that it is fucking slow. Not just in how it lays out its plot and the side quests, but the whole game plays like it is stuck under a layer of meandering and misdirected side quests or approach to action. I know tactics players love having a million years to take their time and plan their moves, like they are matching wits against Garry Kasparov, but holy shit, the rest of us have to get on with our lives here, folks. The average player does not have time for this. It is also clear that Original Sin is a learning title, that Larian was seeing what they could do or what they could implement to give the player a much more expansive feel or a sense of control of the battlefield and the mechanics. And while that is admirable, it is at times clunky as fuck. It would seem, though, Larian has learned from Original Sin and has been able to improve quite a lot on their abilities. So for that, I must absolutely give them credit. It is a sign of a good studio that actually wants to learn from their past efforts, what worked and what didn't, to make better experiences for the audiences down the road. Yet, here I stand having left this game incomplete. I decided that, during that bloated middle I spoke of, I was simply too bored with what I was being presented to continue on. Now, that could be a me problem. I have certainly immersed myself in a lot of varieties of fantasy fiction media over the years, and I'm beginning to feel like I've seen, played, or read it all. And that feeling has partially inspired me to take up the pen, or word processing program really, once again to create something that, if not original, is at least something I think would be a bit different and entertaining, but only time will tell. Or it really could be that Divinity Original Sin just puts too much on the player's plate to be able to digest in a few sittings, or a lot of sittings for that matter. It can at times feel like one is at an all-you-can-eat buffet, where the servers are constantly dumping new courses onto your plate, and you aren't allowed to leave until you finish every single thing put before you. Or perhaps more like a house of a Roman orgy, with attached vomitorium to spew forth your excess, only to come back for more seconds later. It is bloated and spoiled for choice, and that can kill momentum of a game as surely as linearity with few options can. Divinity Original Sin is not a bad game. It is in fact a very good game for what it is and for the genre conventions it works in. However, it is just too much of a game, one that demands you dump another 60 to 100 plus hours into it if you want to see everything, or even if you just want to breeze through the main plot, in a world where we already have too many games in that range of time. That was simply too much to ask of me. And for now, it will sit on my shelf until I feel I have the time to come back to it and give it another go. Another run through with better optimized characters and a much more tactical mindset. You know, probably around retirement age, when I'll have nothing but time on my hands, if I live that long, which I'm beginning to doubt. And Larian themselves have already stated that they are planning something even more complex and in-depth than Baldur's Gate 3 for their next title, which, holy shit, guys, maybe they will be the first studio to break an official release game time over 200 to 300 hours that isn't an endless simulation game like Minecraft or its ilk. Who knows? But I guess we'll find out in time. But if you have nothing but time on your hands and consider yourself too smart for the room, and love deep systems and tactics, and salivate over chainmail bikinis, and quote-unquote traditional orcs, and the obligatory dragon fight, go ahead and give Divinity Original Sin a try. I sure as hell won't stop you. Or maybe just read any number of high fantasy books just like it. That might just be shorter. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orson Welles, and Maslama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.